All right, so there we go. All of you should have received the file for tonight. Not to worry if you haven't got it before. It's just yeah, one of those days where everything seems to have gone wrong. So great, thanks Charmaine. All right, so Michael, yeah, I'll just quickly share the website with you guys, and then you can see what I've done there. I've created an area for the Blackboard Collaborate sessions, the notes and the recordings, and you'll see there you can there's the link to the Blackboard Collaborate area, and as soon as tonight's over, I'll post the MP3 video link over there, and the same with the YouTube one, and over there. So for future lectures, that's where you'll find the slides to be downloaded, and you can see there that I've now opened up the little eye. So yeah, sorry about that. These things happen every now and again. All right, so let's get going. Tonight I've got a number of slides that I want to run through. So at this time I'll start the recording.
Recording started.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's session on building sector management. What we're going to do tonight is just quickly run through the functionality of Blackboard Collaborate, because I want you guys to start interacting a little bit more. It gets boring on this side if nobody talks back to me. So that's what we'll do, is we'll do a little bit of a test, just go through it and see if you guys can play along tonight. All right, so there's our lecture slide for tonight. This is lecture number 2. We'll see how we go through tonight. There's a number of slides. I'm going to ask you guys to do a little bit of a test with me. All right, so if I move on to this one, just a green tick. Everybody is on board. Can you give me a green tick just to say yes, you can hear me? All right, so there we go. All right, and nobody has sound problems tonight. Seems that everybody's okay. Charmaine, you're a bit slow there. I see that there might be a slow connection. And Matthew, you've got your microphone on, but we cannot hear you. I can see there's a delay on your side, but it's all right. We'll play it as it goes along. All right, so these are the little icons that you guys saw last week, and I'm sure you've seen it before. If you hover with your mouse over them, you'll see that you can do different things with them, and you can achieve different things. So for instance, if you look at that first one there, that one just gives you all the little smiley faces and everything like that. The second one, if you are going to go on, let's say you want to go to the kitchen, make a cup of coffee, it's really a boring evening or something like that, or you're going to go onto Facebook like Brian has done now, you can see there that it puts a little clock next to your name and it shows that you're away. So when I ask the questions, I know that you're not there. The next one, there's just a hand up, and I might get you guys to just click on it to see what happens. All right, so there you can see Ryan, and there you go. So this is what you do if you have a question to ask, and you can see it adds little numbers so that I know who's next in line to be answered. All right, so hopefully we won't get so many questions tonight. All right, and then the last one there is just the polling button. Now we are going to use the polling button extensively tonight. I'm going to change it from a tick and a cross to a B, C, and D, and that's going to allow us to fill out a little bit of a quiz. All right, I've got 6 questions for you guys to do. All right, so there's a little indication of what's on the screen. Just rehashing what I've said. Basically, if you want to say something, just click on the talk button. Easy enough, the talk button sits over there. We've got 6 microphones, so 6 of us can talk at the same time. So after you've spoken and after you've asked your question, just take just click on yourself or click on the talk button again, and that takes care of that. All right, we're not going to use the video tonight, just in case somebody's on a slow line. But you guys are welcome to use the chat down here, chat on the left-hand side of the window, and just ask any questions as we go along. All right, so I've given everybody some access tonight, so you can add stuff onto the board. All right, so you can actually add stuff onto the whiteboard by just clicking on the little stencil that's sort of on the left-hand side of your whiteboard. The first one there is just a selection tool. So let's say, for instance, I want to go and select that block that I've drawn there, and I want to move it away. Let's say I want to move it up there, or I want to make it nice and small. That's what the first one will do. The second one has got fingers. All right, so I want you guys to all grab a finger or a star or a tick box or a happy face and just put it anywhere on the screen so that I can see you guys are actually. All right, so there we go. So there's a few arrows, a few fingers, a tick box. Seems like we're in business. The sun is definitely shining somewhere on the screen. All right, and you'll also see that there's a little text box. All right, so the one with the A on it. Now you can see that there's two. If you click on it, you'll see that it creates one with lines and it creates one without lines. And you can just, if you create or select the one without the lines, it will allow you to just test. Let me just write here, test screen typing. So there you can see it allows you to just type anywhere on the screen, and you can add text anywhere on the screen. All right, so there we can see that's easy enough to do. And if you choose the one with the lines, you'll see that it will create a little box where you can add more text in it, and it will add little scroll arrows on the right hand side. So that's why I prefer the one without the lines. It's just easier. All right, so there's also an icon for drawing a box, right, or a rectangle or a circle. So and you can go and grab the circle or the rectangle tool and do your worst or do your best. All right, so all right, it seems that everybody's got that quite going. Yep, there's a black box on the screen. What we might do is I might get you guys to show me where you are. All right, so just by using the text box, show me where more or less you are, and I'll start out a bit down here, Sydney. Okay, so that's more or less where I am. There's a few fingers over there, and yeah, you can you can use the mouse to draw your name as well. So it's not as easy without using a tablet. I left my tablet in the office tonight, so yeah, we'll only be typing letters down there. All right, so do we not have anybody in Western Australia or Northern Territory or any of those places? No one. It seems that everybody is either in New South Wales or in Queensland. All right, so we won't keep that against you guys. So yeah. All right, so there we go, Mitch. Yep, you up way up there, far northern Queensland. I saw that acronym in one of your posts. So great stuff. And Matt, I guess, Matt, where would you be? Would that be Brisbane southeast corner? It's sort of a big map. Yep. Oh, okay, Gold Coast. All right, so close enough. Yeah, there we go. Michael's also in Sydney. So, Michael, you have absolutely no excuse for not stopping by the campus and inviting me to a coffee. There's a nice coffee shop just down the street from campus, so I expect to see you soon. All right, and that goes, of course, for everybody. When you visit Sydney, just drop me a line, and we'll take it from there. All right. Okay, so now that you guys have played around a little bit and understand exactly how it works, let's have a quick look at what we've done so far. All right, so last week we briefly had a look at the history of the industry. We saw what the importance of the construction industry is for the GDP, and we know that we sort of give around about 6.5 to 7.5% per annum contribution to the GDP, which is quite a bit. All right, so it's quite a bit of weight, and of course the government should listen to what we have to say. All right. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't really have organizations. The AIB is a little bit in a flux situation at the moment, so we need some direction there, but we'll see how it goes in the next year. We also had a look at the different role players. All right, so remember we spoke about the clients and yep, did I say gross domestic product? So yep, GDP, that's correct. So we give, let me just put a box around that. So we provide about between 6.5% and 7.5%. All right, so I'm being particularly vague there because it's part of your assessment item, assignment number 1. You guys have to go and find out exactly how much it is, but normally it's around the 6.5 to 7.5 percentage points. So last year it was around about just on 7%, 6.98 or something like that, that we contributed. We also had a quick look at the drivers of the industry, what drives the industry, what develops it, the need from the population, the community, the industry, the unions even have a input in there as well, and of course, the development of science and the development of infrastructure across the country. And then, of course, political importance. You can never put a politician down. They'll always try and get as much out of it as possible. And the social importance, well, that together, let's just put a box around the last 3 over there. Social, political, and the community drivers, housing. We're talking domestic housing and stuff like that. Really big stuff happening at the moment. All right, so I'll quickly, today I got some stats from RP Data. Those of you guys who play around in the industry, you must be familiar with this. So this was released on the 30th of September. We only got it today. And this gives you an indication of what's happening in terms of the residential market. Now remember, these figures are only residential, so anything, houses, apartments, anything like that, and it gives you an idea of what's happening over there. So the interesting one there is, look at that, the growth, the year-on-year growth in Sydney. So that's almost, well, let's be really optimistic, it's almost about 10%, so a considerable growth in the industry there, or in the value of the property down there. The median dwelling price, 588. I can tell you now that, yeah, I don't think you can buy much for 588 in Sydney anymore, and definitely not a freestanding house. Those of you guys who also live in Sydney, you feel free and welcome to jump into the chat window or just click on the talk button and add your opinion in there. All right, so the other important one there, of course, is we've got a number of students in Brisbane. All right, so there's definitely something happening over there. We don't really have anything for northern Queensland. Sorry, Mitch. So I think we'll have to ask you to do a little bit of research for us and see if you can find us some statistics on that. All right, so Michael reckons he's paying $485 for a 1-bedroom unit in Sydney. Gee, that's a lot of money. I paid, when I just arrived a year ago, $560 for a very, very small 3-bedroom place in Hornsby, which is about 25 km north of the CBD. Oh, Mitchell, you reckon it's all bad. So yeah, that's, well, at least you've got your girlfriend. So we won't ask you about your girlfriend or how it works. We'll talk about that later on. No, we jump, Ryan, we jump on the train. The place I got is really close to a train station. It takes me about 40 minutes to get to the CBD where the campus is. So in 40 minutes time, I can basically respond to all the emails that you guys send in the middle of the night. And the same goes for when I go home at night. So interesting. So again, when you guys come and visit me in Sydney, please feel free, just give me a call and let me know that you're on the way. All right, so let's have a look at the best performers for property. So there we can see Sydney at the top again. Not good news for those of us who live here, because it means that we're going to pay more and more, especially if you want to change your property. And then, of course, those of you guys who live in Hobart. Does anybody live in Hobart? Red Cross says no. Green Tick says yes. I don't think we have anybody in Hobart, as far as I know. I've checked all the introductions, but in any case, we can see there Hobart is definitely not the place to be if you in terms of property. If you're a greenie, perhaps it might be a good place to be We save the forests down there. All right, and then of course on the next slide I'll show you something really interesting. Is Darwin. Darwin is actually a 10-year top performer. So it's interesting to see that a place like Darwin is actually really moving and shaking in terms of year-on-year 10-year totals. I've got a friend that lives there. He says you either live there for 3 months or for 10 years. So maybe that's why. Apparently Darwin is quite a nice place to live once you get used to the heat. Right, and the just talking about the prices again, Sydney up at 588, Hobart at about 300, quite affordable. The problem with Hobart, what do you guys think is the problem with Hobart? Anybody? Click on the talk button or in the chat window. Why do you think we have low values in Hobart? What is missing in Tasmania? What do you think is missing in Tasmania? Well, yep, there we go. So Benjamin, there's employment problems. There's no industry, no jobs. It's really isolated. So the other thing is, of course, you need work, you need feet for people to come and live there. It's a nice place to go on holiday. I want to maybe do next year in April, get a camper van and go down there and just see what it's all about. So Ryan, you've got the connection. Is it perhaps the lack of connection, or I'm missing exactly what you're trying to say there? But I'm sure you're going to enlighten me straight away, and I'll scroll on to the next slide while we wait for your response there. So all of these figures, of course, is available for you guys for your assessment. All right, so you can use some of the stuff for your assessment. I've made the link available. It's on the Moodle site today. I've added 2 links for you, 2 interesting articles. This one is, of course, one of them. All right, so Ryan has clarified there the lack of transport for industry. Yes, it's a really big issue. There's a joke about that, but I'll talk about that later once I get to know you guys better. So this is what I wanted to show you. There is our friend Darwin sitting on about 9.3%. So that's annual change over the last 10 years. So strange enough, I would never have thought Darwin would be top of the pops. So okay, so John's asked a question about will the sources of these be uploaded as well? So John, where I got this is just from RP data. What I've given you guys is the PDF where I sort of plagiarized this from. So you'll be able to go and see it. And of course, RP data I'm not sure exactly where they get their data from, but it might be ABS. So you can check in the documents that I've posted on the website. All right. So yes, oil and gas developments. Also, I think, Simon, agreeing with you, is that it's going to become a gateway. I think there's going to be a lot happening from there. So we'll watch that space, perhaps see if we can get some property there. Or first, just go and see what it's all about and see if the beer is actually better in Darwin. All right, so for tonight's lecture, what we want to do is we are going to continue our short introduction with the government. I'm going to start out by asking you guys a few questions. We are going to look at the different roles and responsibilities of government. And we're going to just touch on the science and technology, national global initiatives. Not really important. What I really want to focus on tonight is we're just going to look at these and see if we can somehow bring this into your assignments. All right, so there's a question for you guys, all part of the fun. So what you can do is, let me just change the polling type. I'll change it to an A, B, or a C. So there we go. And you have to keep score of your own correct and wrong answers. So this is part of our little test tonight. See if you guys can go. So what do we remember on Anzac Day? And let's say I'll start our timer over there. And I'll give you guys 0 minutes, and I'll give you 10 seconds to answer the question. Unless everybody answers already, All right, so Benjamin, yep, you've got A there. Yep, you can just use the polling. All right, so there we go. And remember, you guys have to keep your own score. So indeed, everybody that had A correct, you're on your way to being real Aussies, I guess. This is one of the questions that came out of the citizenship test. Actually, all of these questions came from there except the last one, which I just made up today. All right, so the next one, the legal document that set out the rules for the government of Australia. All right, so you guys can use the polling button. So let's have a look at the right one. Remember, you have to keep score of your own rights and wrongs. So indeed, it is C. So that would be the Australian Constitution. All right. Another question would be, of course, what does a referendum aim to do? It's not one of the questions that we're going to ask tonight, but it might be one that that comes out in a quiz later on. All right, so let's have a look at the next question. And this one is, you might have to think a little bit about this one. This one, the first time I read this one, it sort of baffled me a little bit because I couldn't figure out exactly what the question was all about. So there we go. So John reckons it's C. Michael reckons A. Few A's on the board. Matthew also C. Simon an A. All right, so this is an interesting one. Nobody's going for B yet. Yep, and there Ryan always goes for the one that's not on the board. Thanks, Ryan. That goes in your file. All right, so there we go. Let's see what the right one is. It is actually C. All right, so we'll talk about this one during the lecture tonight. So interesting. All right, question number 4. So which of the statements about the state governments is correct? And you can use the polling button to make your choice, or you can just type it into the chat window. All right, so we've got a few C's, we've got an A and a B. Yep, John's on a B there. All right, A, all the states have the same constitution. Benjamin, do you want to phone a friend perhaps on that one? Just kidding. There's no money on this, so you don't get any galaxy points. All right, so let's have a look at the right one there. Each state has its own constitution. So, yep. All right, and then question number 5. What is the name of a proposal to make a law in Parliament? And there we go, B. We've got B from Simon, same from John and Benjamin. All right, there's a lot of B's over there. All right, so obviously that one was way too easy. And then just this one. This is our last question just for tonight. I'll clear the board. So what is the national flower? All right, so we've got a few A's. Yep. There's a few people on the fence there. And the right answer is, of course, the golden wattle. All right, so I was going to try and add a few options in there to see if you guys... All right, so if you had 0 out of 6, let's just clear the board again. There's a clear board. So there we go, Ryan, you had 3 to 4 out of 6, not too bad. You can, if you had 3 to 4 out of 6, you will qualify to become Aussie. You need of the, all right, there we go, Simon, 5 to 6, almost everything. If you get 15 out of 20 for the citizenship quiz, you're okay. And yeah, see, there we go. All right, we'll leave it at that. All right, so let's move on to the actual information for tonight's session. As obviously we're looking at Australia, and we've got a federal system, and this came in the 1900s. So it basically united all the different colonies that we had, all those different colonies that came across. So a quick question for you: which was the only colony that settled in Australia that was not part of the prisoners shipped from overseas. Which would you say is or which city was founded by? All right, so there we go, South Australia. Yep, that's correct, Timothy. So Adelaide is the only one that was settled outside of, well, let's say by not by prisoners, but by free landowners or free settlers. The Federation, obviously what we're trying to do is we're trying to split the power, and we want to make sure that all the power doesn't sit in the same spot and that they're different decision makers, and therefore the Commonwealth and the state powers are separate in terms of what they can do. And you can see there in the previous slide we spoke about the exclusive power. All right, so that would be basically just the federal, and then the concurrent powers. This is where we start talking about sharing stuff, so insurance, banking, industrial relations, anything like that. And then of course the state powers that we've got over there, education, local transport, government, anything like that, the stuff that Campbell Newman is, for instance, doing in Queensland at the moment with the bikies. That's really interesting. If you guys watch the news today, there's some developments over there. Soon, I think the bikies will be up in arms. They're not too happy about the new laws that's coming through. As everybody had a chance to look at the first assessment, so I'll just change the poll. So yes, say green tick says yes, or red tick says no. All right, so in there I've worked in a small little case study for you where you have to look at the different types of contract strategies that you have to come up with, and one of the case studies there, I think it's the last one, deals with bikies. All right, so try and think about what you'll do in that case. All right, so this is just an example or a layout of how the powers are made up. All right, so exclusive, just the Commonwealth, then we share the power, and then of course, and you can see there, let's see if I can grab a arrow. So tonight the arrows are not available. Let's see if I can grab a finger. All right, so the powers will move obviously in that direction. So you can see it's top down. So Commonwealth sits across everything, and it's going to be interesting to see as well what they're going to do with the ACT, where they have gone for marriage equality, and of course Tony Abbott is not too fond of that. He's actually now challenging that, and we'll see where that goes. All right, we'll maybe watch that as the term goes on, and that will give us something to talk about. All right, so over here I've given you a few references. All right, so you can go and have a look at those references, and you'll see, you know, exactly what goes into the military, what exactly goes into currency, why the Commonwealth or the federal government gets to decide those types of things. All right, so the 3 laws of lawmaking, and I've once again used our friendly friends at the government's resources, and there's basically, it's a good example. All right, so Charmaine, that's part of assessment number 1. You said that you missed the case studies in assessment number 1. I think it's question number 3. I've given you a few case studies that you have to think about, you know, contracts and the types of contracts and strategies that you need to use. So go and have a look at assessment number 1, question number 3, and that will give you an idea. All right, so there you can see there's our federal government sits on top, and down there's Canberra, and of course that's followed on with the states and territories. All right, so all of the capitals. Remember we spoke about Darwin earlier on today, and of course I wrote down there, each of them have their own specific functions, specific rules, and then of course the local councils. There's about 560, 570 different councils in Australia at the moment, so quite a number of decision makers around the country that gets to make choices for the locals. All right. So if we look at each of these, what we'll do now is we'll look at each of these separately, and we'll say, all right, what are the roles and responsibilities of each of these, and why is it important for us to have separate powers and that. And of course, you guys can just cut away. A1 and A2. Oh, that's weird. All right, so Mitchell, I'll just check that. All right, so hold on a sec. Let's just go and quickly check that while I've got you guys on the line. Assessment number 1. Oh, yeah. So this might, it might actually be a part of the second assignment, or I might be confusing the assignments completely. So sorry about that. Let's talk about the assessments way at the end of tonight. All right. If we look at the Federal Parliament, there's the different roles and responsibilities that we have from the feds, and you can see there that it's quite far-reaching: trade and commerce, foreign policy, anything to do with currency, and of course the census and statistics, bankruptcy and insolvency, anything like that. And of course there's the military over there. We spoke about that briefly, immigration, and of course quarantine. Yeah, after a day like today, I might have to go into quarantine. It seems that I've messed up quite a few things today. And I think the question that I was referring to, it's actually in Construction Management 1. So those of you guys who have me for a lecture tomorrow night, that's where that question is from. It's not from Building Sector Management. So it's been a rough weekend. Renovations and wine, all of those things don't necessarily go together. All right, so you can see there's all the different activities and responsibilities from our feds. If we move on to the states and territories, what I've done there is I've just given you a little map. Hopefully you guys should know where the capital cities are. I've tried to keep the color coding more or less the same. And if we look at the responsibilities for each of these state and territory responsibilities, we're starting to see that we have to go down into schools, public transport. So that would be Queensland Rail or New South Wales, the Transport Department, roads, utilities, electricity. Each of those have, each of the states have their own responsibility in terms of supplying those utilities. And then, of course, the state police. All right. So remember, we have the AFP, and then, of course, the state police as well. So there's a good idea. You can have a look at the slide, and it gives you a good idea of exactly what the different responsibilities are of each of the states and territories. If we move on to the local councils, and remember I said that there's about 560 of them across Australia, so that figure is about a year old. As far as I know, that's not yet increased, but it is, you know, as more and more towns get promulgated, we'll see an increase in that number. I think that the basic increase is now passed, and we obviously just growing really slowly. All right, so there you can see the responsibilities. We won't go into detail of this. You guys can have a look at the responsibilities of the 3 different levels independently, and then I've just added a single slide, sort of taking everything into a single page to say, all right, if we look at federal, state, and local, what's the different responsibilities? All right, so there's a comment from Simon. So yeah, there's some of these areas are amalgamating, and strange enough, the one in Rockhampton, that's actually de-amalgamating now. So from the 1st of January next year, that's going to de-amalgamate. They added 3 shires together about 5 or 6 years ago, and yeah, that just didn't work for the locals. I think more so for the politicians, not so much for the locals living in the area. So they're changing that back. That's de-amalgamating. So interesting to see how these things go. Also in terms of business, we'll see that these, you know, there's basic cycles that they go through every 8 or 10 years. They like to do a change. Change is as good, or, you know, change is as good as a holiday, they always say, and I think the politicians do the same. All right, so there we go. Nice slide, shows you sort of on a single page exactly what goes on. All right, so a question for you guys, and this is now where you can use the text box. How are laws made in Australia? How are laws made? And just briefly, give me a few points. What do you guys think? What is the process that they have to go through? You can use the chat window, or you can just type on the screen and see if you guys get it right. How does it start? How does the lawmaking process start? All right, so there we go. There's a bill that's introduced into Parliament. All right, so that's a good start. What happens next? All right, so Simon says there's a bill introduced to Parliament, debated, then voted on. Mitchell, you reckon the bill must pass, then given royal assent. All right, so grand words, yep, that's all more or less right. Yep, there we go. Okay, so there we go. I can move on to the next slide. Yes, someone gets upset. Campbell is really upset at the moment, so there seems to be a lot of things happening that way. So if we look at this is now just, I've copied this from the government website, so there's just a simple way of seeing how the laws are made. So it basically comes down to exactly what Simon and Mitchell and John and Benjamin have said. All right, so it's proposed, all right, and then it moves up through the different houses, and once all of the Parliament has agreed, then of course Quentin Bryce signs it into law, and that's just called the royal assent. So there we go, Mitchell, very good. I'm pleasantly surprised. If we look at what's happened now, breaking the colonial ties, a few of these acts came through, and since the 1930s, 1942s, 86, you can see that Australia has systematically moved away, breaking those colonial ties, or becoming more and more independent. Even though it was independent from the start, it's just a process that they went through to make sure that, you know, it's definitely independent. So that brings us to the next question about the constitutional monarchy. All right, so there's always a question about the Queen, and I'm going to ask you guys a question about that a little bit later on, about the Republic and the Queen. So the Queen is still the head of state, but in terms of Australia, is she the head of state, or where does she fit into the scheme of things? Anybody want to add something on the screen? Just type away, or even in the chat window. All right, so yep, she holds that position. All right, and does she have any influence over the government? Can she influence any lawmaking? Can she influence the decisions that Parliament take? So those are the types of questions that typically you guys would think about. All right, and what is the role of Quentin Bryce, for instance? She's the Governor General. All right, so she would represent. She's basically the that's right. There we go. So the Governor General is just the rep for the Queen, and so that's why we still have them. In reality, the Queen of England doesn't really have an influence on how we do business down here, but it's nice. I think it will stay the way it is for the near future in any case. If we think about the separation of powers, and this is now where that one question came in that we had earlier on, the functions of government allocated to those three different levels. So we've got the legislative side, we've got the executive side, and of course the judicial functions. Right, so this is all, of course, part of the old Westminster system. That separation of power wasn't always possible, and that's one of the holdovers that's actually a bit of an issue at the moment. So if we look at the control of the government, there's the three levels that we spoke about. So the legislative stuff, the Parliament makes the changes to the laws, but now that we've made the changes, now how are we going to execute that? And then of course we move on down the line, and then of course the judges at the bottom of the, let's call it the bottom of the triangle, they get to interpret and apply those laws. All right, so there's basically on a single slide an explanation for the differences between legislative, executive, and judicial power in terms of the Australian government and how the government is controlled. So, any questions? Do we have any questions at this point? Red cross means no. No questions. You're just floating along happily. All right, so no questions from anybody at the moment. All right, so that's okay. If at any point in time you do have questions, just put up your hand and I'll see if I can give you an answer. All right, so if we look at the Commonwealth Constitution, so there's the doctrine of the separation of powers. So it's really important to make sure that we have, the independence, so that the judge isn't the jury as well, and the hunter isn't the poacher, or the, well, what's the story, hunter and the poacher being the same person. So that's what we're trying to avoid over there. So one side of the government gets to make it, another side of the government gets to interpret and apply it. So we can see there that the Parliament sits with the legislative power, the Cabinet gets the executive power, and I might just, for a brief second over there, bring you guys to focus on that and then slip back into this slide over there. All right, so remember what we said, there's the definitions for the executive power, and you can see now the government ministers and the Governor General, they start playing an important role over there. All right, and then of course the judicial power over there, that's where the judges do their thing, the High Court, and of course the other federal courts sitting on that side. So a quick question for you guys. On the first question, should Australia become a republic? Who says yes or no? Red cross is no, and a green tick says yes. All right, so we've got a few yeses, a few no's. The no's are taking over. All right, so all right, we'll let's move on. All right, yeah, John, that's the same. I used to live in a republic. The real scheme of things, it's not that much different. All right, so let's clear the board. Let's move on to the second question. How should the Governor General be appointed and removed? Or, well, basically I should take out that word how. Should the Governor General be appointed and removed? Can't remember exactly what I had planned with this question. As a rep for the Queen, do you think we should get rid of her? Green tick says yes, red tick says no. All right, so once again, there's a few, Michael's got a yes there, and a few no's over there. All right, and then the last question, clearing the board, do we still need a queen? Who says yes, who says no? All right, so quite a few no's. John's typing a message for us. I'm sure it's going to be a nice one. Yeah, well, that's the thing about the queens, and the royals. Everybody, when they come and visit, everybody's out on the street doing their thing. So, yeah, interesting questions. This is just, make you think about it a little bit differently. All right, so let's move on to the next part. This is now the different roles of the government, and of course, the government can take various roles and responsibilities. So, for instance, it can be as a legislator where they make laws and do the planning. On the other side, it might be as a client for large infrastructure buildings or infrastructure in general. It might actually be for something in terms of residential stuff as well. Something that I think we are going to see a lot more of is the PPPs, public-private partnerships. I think there's a lot of opportunity to be had over there. Seeing that the government doesn't always have the necessary funds, the private sector might become a little bit more involved and invest into these big projects. We've seen it overseas. Toll roads, a good example of PPPs, prisons and power stations. So those are are areas that we can see the PPP is expanding in the near future. Another question that we might ask later on is, of course, the nuclear question. Should Australia go nuclear, or are we happy with the wind stuff that we have? What about the coal? We might run out. So I'll leave you guys to think about those ones. And then, of course, the contractor and designer roles of the government. And you guys can think about these things. I've just given you a few things on the board there to think about, and come up with a few more of your own ideas. So if we look at the government as a client, a little bit of stats. This is from ABS. I don't think it's not 1350. It's I'll find the number for you. I picked it up today. You can see there that in 2012 the number has decreased slightly. So 2011, 2012, the number has come down, well, not significantly, but there's a slight decrease in the number. Why would you guys think there's a decrease in government spending in terms of the construction industry? Any ideas? Election, yep, that would be a good motivator. All right, so the moment the election was called, basically no money. Basically, when the election was called 9 months or so ago, obviously they go into caretaker mode, and they just take care of business. So another question for you guys: the term of office for the Australian government is 3 years. Who says we should increase that to 4 years? Who says 3 years is too short? Green tick says yes, we must make it 4 years. Red says no, we should keep it the way it is. All right, so the reason I asked that question is just 3 years is a really, it's a short period. If you think about it, it takes them a year or so to gear up. It takes them another year or so to get things going, and then in the last year they're already thinking about the next election, and they've stopped doing stuff. So that's just the reason I've asked that question. So there's quite a few different answers on the board there, a few yeses, a few no's, so interesting stuff. Yes, Timothy. Good question. Yeah, let's move along. Let's move along. All right. So if we think about the government as a designer and a contractor, there's obviously investment from the government as well. The BLAR was an example of that. It didn't really work out that well. A lot of contractors jumped onto that bandwagon, and a lot of the schools. Yeah, that's right. So Ryan, I agree with you that didn't really work out so well. Another one was Peter Garrett's, the insulation thing that went on. That also didn't work out so well. There's a few people that lost their lives in that one. So it doesn't always work out the way that they planned it. So yeah, I can see we'll have to at some point in time have a political debate about what's happening in the country. We might not have it tonight though. So there's a few ideas for you in terms of the government as a designer and a contractor. And then I think if I slide over to the next slide, this is now the last section that I wanted to cover tonight, is just the science and technology, the investment from the government side. So there's a few things happening from the government side where they try and invest in science and really pushing it hard. So on the Moodle website, I've given you a few links to industry links. I've given you links to the CSIRO. And I think today I also added links to the Australian Construction Industry Forum, which has links back to the government, so you can go and have a look at those links that I've posted onto the Moodle website for you, and it gives you a good idea. The CRCs, there's one for construction. It runs out of Brisbane University, so it does research into construction technology. Now, there's not a lot happening in construction, A brick is still a brick, and a brick was a brick in the 1930s, and it's still more or less the same size. So it's a slow-moving industry in terms of development. But when we start looking at the fringe tools that sits on the side, something like BIM or procurement, anything like that, CAD, those are technologies that's fast-moving, although not directly related to the industry. All right, so Matthew seems to be having a lot of connection problems. We might see, Matthew, I might give you a call afterwards or tomorrow, perhaps, to try and sort out what's going on with you. All right, and then, yeah, all over the place, that's correct. All right, so I just took a screen grab today of the science.gov.au website. And just to give you guys an idea of what's happening over there, you can see there's the CSIRO, there's the CRCs, those research centers. There's quite a lot happening in terms of construction, railway, infrastructure, and even though you guys might not be, strictly involved in the fringe areas like transport, logistics, I would think you guys need to have just go and read a bit and look at it. And when the construction industry has an off day, those industries tend to, really be on the pickup side. So the other interesting thing that I did find on the website today is that we have time to develop titanium horseshoes. All right, so using a 3D printer, we've been able to now use metal. And instead of the plastic that the 3D printers used to run, and this is our prototype horseshoe, or two of them. I'm not sure where the other two is, because the last time I checked, the horses had 4 of those, or required 4 of them, but we'll see, maybe the other 2 will pitch up. Incidentally, those 3D printers are a lot cheaper now than when they first hit the market. You can buy a cheapish 3D printer for about $300 now. If you want to spend a bit of cash on it, $1,000 will get you a really nice 3D printer. And then you can print the chess sets or other memorabilia with it. All right. Interesting. I think 3D printing for CAD and BIM is also going to be, that's the next bandwagon. There's a building in Sydney, Star Wars figures. There's a building in Sydney that was actually printed using 3D printers, the different components. So before construction, just to make sure that it was actually constructible, because it was obviously designed by an architect. All right, so there's our last slide for tonight. Just the development efforts from the government. All right, so obviously they push both local and international, different initiatives that try and get the wheels going and trying to get the stuff happening in terms of Australia's reputation, both locally and internationally. So I'll leave this with you guys. Interesting stuff on the Moodle website that I've posted for you today, and I think that was our last slide. So at this time, any questions from anybody? Anyone? All right, so if we don't have any questions, red tick means no, green tick, Ryan, do you have one? Just click on the chat button. Now would be, go for it.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Just with the assignment 1, you talk about in a report fashion. Is that going to be a technical report, or can it be more so in our own words?
I'm happy to use, or I'm quite happy if you guys use your own words. Doesn't really have to be technical, and just to make sure that I'm not messing up the different subjects. I think I've only got 2 or 3 subjects running this term, and I'm sort of messing it up. But there's the questions. So, Ryan, to answer your question, a report. It doesn't have to be a scientific report. Make it readable. I think in one of the posts that John asked the question as well, I mean, you can state the facts so many times, it gets boring, you know. So give me what I need, but also give me something more colorful so that I know that you actually know what's going on and you understand, where the question is going. Not sure if that answered your question. Did it? All right, great. So, yep, there we go. The green tick from Ryan. Any other questions from anybody? I can see Mitchell, you're typing something. All right, yeah, John, go for it. Just click on the talk button.
Hey, mate, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I just having some trouble with just sort of trying to figure out what information means what on the ABS website and just some of the figures.
All right, so yep, so yeah, that's normal. I mean, the first time I saw those figures, I also thought, gee, what are these guys smoking, and can I have some of it? The idea that, not everybody will get the same answers, and I don't expect this isn't a mathematical question or anything like that. So when you do the answer for this one, when you do this report, what I want you to do is make assumptions and state those assumptions, So there are going to be areas where you just don't know how those figures were compiled, and if you can't find it, or if you can't find the supporting catalogs, it makes it difficult. So what I want you to do is just, make an assessment of it, and then, make an assumption, state the assumption, and let me know what you've done so that I know how to assess your answer.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be so precise, just as long as the message is clear, I guess.
Yeah, well, remember what I said. I like pictures and graphs and stuff, so make sure it's nice and colorful.
Especially with some of the data, a lot of it has it like quarterly and stuff like that. Do we just sort of just go by a yearly thing, or how do we go about that?
All right. So the last figures that I could find was released in April. So if you can find those figures, make sure that your opening paragraph in your question is, when I did this analysis, these are the numbers that I found, these are the statistic or the catalogs that I used, and make sure that you've got those dates in there. And then I'm much more interested in the annual data. All right, so I'm not so much worried about the different quarters, but definitely the annual data. If you do your question, make sure that you've got everything in terms of the annual stuff.
I just I looked over some of the data that you had in the last lecture, and I looked it over with some of the stuff that I could find, and it didn't really match up. So I don't know, see if I can figure that out. But yeah.
No, and that's totally understandable. You looked at it from a different point of view. I looked at it from a different point of view, or I might have grabbed an older table or a newer table. So as long as you state in the opening paragraph, this is the catalog number that I've used, and this is the date that it was published, that gives me an idea of where to go and look for your answer.
No, I'll just post whatever I can find on the forum if I have any more questions.
All right, great. So thanks, John. All right, so there's a question. Yeah, thanks, John. There's a question from Mitchell. Just click on the talk button, go for it.
You got me there, Josh?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, cool. More of a trivial question. You asked for 2 reports. Are we to provide 2 table of contents in the one document? And if so, or if not, how do we split them?
Yeah, that is a strange question. Let's see. Let's see if you can. I definitely won't mark you down if you have 2 table of contents. If you see what I've done with the study guide this year, you've got for each of the different topics that we have, I've inserted a little study guide, a little table of contents there. So I'm quite happy if you split them in 2. All right. So question number 1, there's the table of contents for question number 1. Question number 2, there's the table of contents for question number 2. That's one option that you can follow. Option 2 is just to combine it. The 2 questions don't really follow on each other. It's 2 different questions. So it's really up to you. That's not going to sink the ship at the end of the day for me.
Yeah, fair enough. I often get caught up on these trivial things anyway, so part of procrastination, I guess.
I've made a note of that, so I'll definitely see if I can catch you out this time, okay? Just joking. All right, so we also have a question there from Charmaine. She says she's having trouble understanding the tables in particular. Yep, it is really boring stuff, but it does become interesting once you've submitted your assignment. So once you've submitted your assignment, all that boring stuff goes out the window. So just keep on going with that. All right, I can see 2 more questions coming in the chat box. So I'll wait a while for those to come through. How many words do you want for A 4.2.1? So 4.2.1, that would be one of those participative forums. I think I said 400. Let's just go and check quickly there. If we can bring up that assignment, I'll quickly navigate to assessment number 4. And you can see there, I think that I said there we go, so 400 words. Now 400 words is the absolute maximum. So when you do that, Michael, just remember that's the absolute maximum. I have to read everything and I have to grade those, so make sure that you keep it nice, factual, and to the point. All right. Does that answer your question? Green tick or red tick means that I need to talk some more. All right, great, thanks. All right, so any other questions from anybody else? All right, so what I might do is I might just see if I can close that, get back there, and go back to the front page there. All right, so RP data. RP data is used by estate agents. So let's just go back to our website and see if I can show you where I made the link for you. I'll just quickly navigate to the front page of our course. There's building sector management. All right, so there's the little table that I've created for you guys, and let's just see where did I put those. All right, so if you look at the additional readings in topic number 2, I've added these 2 for you guys today. So there's the RP data. It was released on the 1st of October, which wasn't that long ago. And there's some detailed national reports. I'm not sure exactly what RP data stands for, John, so maybe somebody can enlighten us and go and do a little bit of research on it. I just know that whenever I'm looking into property or buying property, there's RP data is really handy because it tells you what the prices are for houses in your area, what the prices are for the state, what's the movement in the industry. So, all right, so there's another question from Benjamin. As Q1 may involve a decent amount of discussion, can we use some bullet points for question number 2? Yes, you can. It's just, yeah, why not? I mean, at the end of the day, if you give me the answer, make sure that it's still in, still typical report form. Don't break it. But yes, you can use more synaptic type questions or answers for that question there, Benjamin. Ryan, you asked about the GDP also. If you're asking about the GDP in terms of, you have to elaborate because I'm missing the question there. Give me some more hints. It's been a long day, so that might be the reason why I'm struggling tonight. What data is it? The GDP, you'll get the information about the GDP from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, so that's the gross domestic product. RP data is something that has to do with properties and property values, movement in the markets, that type of thing. Not sure if I'm answering your question. If not, let me know.
No, you're there, Josh.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so so it's gross domestic product, but I suppose what's that actually capture? What is the domestic product?
All right, so what it covers is basically anything. Well, there's different industries, and if you're going to have a look at at last week's lecture, you'll see that the industries that's most closely aligned with construction is basically mining and manufacturing and those types of things. But if you look at the different industries, mining, manufacturing, forestry, fisheries, all of those, tourism has an input into the product that's created internally in Australia. So on a global scale, it's basically the internal markets, the amount of wealth that we create internally, and that's what GDP is. So if you guys, does that clear it up? Does that give you a better idea, or would you guys want a small lecture on economics? Because we can work it in. I can maybe do a lecture on economics, what goes into GDP, and the macroeconomics, microeconomics. We might look at that. I'll make a note of that. That's something that you guys would have covered with a guy like Neon Abato previously. If you haven't had Neon before, that's maybe the reason. So I'll make a note and see if I can work it into next week's lecture. All right, so John has asked there, labor union exposure. So what I was after in terms of the labor unions is, of course, what kind of input and influence have they been able to effect? Can they pressurize decision making? Can they pressurize, or can they form? They can slow down construction. The word corruption almost slipped in there, thinking about those credit cards that we saw in the press recently. But yes, what is the role of the labor unions? Is it positive? Is it negative? Well, what you'll find is in the employment section of the ABS, you'll find how many people are members of the unions. So that would be a start. You can go and check out and see, that will give you a good idea, because the first thing that you'll see is how many people are involved in terms or employed in terms of the construction industry, and then you'll see how many of those people are actually union members. All right? And then you can start making decisions from there onwards. That's a very good question, Mitchell. So that's definitely a really good question, especially in terms of when the economy slows down. At the moment, the economy is sort of starting to pick up again. There's a little bit of confidence in the market, and you'll also see that when you read the RP data. And if you go onto the Australian Construction Industries Forum website, the ACIF, go onto their website and go read the latest reports that they've got there. You can see there is a slight turnaround in the market. Now, remember last week we said we're in the 34th month of contraction, so the market has been really slowly, it's really going backwards. Basically, it's not not increasing, it's not decreasing, but in the big scheme of things, it is actually getting smaller. No, Westpac is definitely not slowing down, because I've got a home loan through them and I'm paying for that $7.1 billion profit that they posted today. Not too happy about that. Maybe I'll stop paying for a month or so and see what they say. The banking industry, they of course also contribute to the GDP. But when there's a slowdown in the economy, they are the first to go. Friends of mine worked in London in the GFC in 2009, and when the bank closed down, they didn't really close down. They just needed to scale down their operation. They had a fire alarm go off. Everybody exited the building, and the people who they still wanted back, their access cards would open the doors, and everybody else was just left outside. So that's how they got rid of them. I can tell you the story about that later on. So there we go. A labourer on a major construction site earns more than the project managers, yep, and the same with well, the same with tradespeople and those guys. They earn good pay at the end of the day. I'm not sure about the labourers though, Ryan. Or, yeah, we'll have to talk about that. Is that project managers or the Prime Minister? Just kidding. Yeah, there's some really good money. About 2 years ago, we did lose a lot of students to the industry. Students would come up to about the 3rd year in the construction management degree and then would stop studying because they would earn salaries of 160 upwards to 220,000. So there's a lot of money to be made out there. All right, so yeah, definitely the unions do push it. So there we go. All right, and John reckons, yep, I read your bio today. I see that you've done some plumbing work. Yeah. Well, I've got at the moment I'm doing renovations at my house. So I've got a plumber, electrician, and a carpenter on site, and I can tell you they're friendly and everything, but they do make bucks on the side as well. You know, so profit's not a dirty word. It's supposed to make yes. They're supposed to make a few bucks, but yeah. All right. So, any other questions on the assessment item? I'm sorry for confusing you guys. It was definitely I was confused between building sector management and construction 1. So that happens from time to time. So those of you guys who have me again tomorrow night, we can talk about that again tomorrow. Yeah, it's 10:20. Gee, it's way past my bedtime. You know, us old guys, you know, have trouble getting up in the mornings. So yeah, I'll see you guys next week. And if you have any questions, just remember post them to the questions and answers forum. Okay. All right. So I might stop sharing this and go back there and stop the recording.
Recording stopped.
All right. Thanks, Matthew. See you guys later.